Welcome to Cut the Crop, keeping you in the know about everything you grow. Researchers, growers and other interesting folk delivering insights and information on topics ranging from agronomy to profitability. Brought to you by the Foundation for Arable Research.
Hello and welcome to Cut the Crop. I'm Anna Heslop and today I'm talking to FAR CEO Alison Stewart. Just for an update on what FAR's been up to over recent months. We're going to start by just asking, how did we get through COVID? Was there any impact on FAR and its work of the recent lockdowns?
Yeah, well, hello. Yes, nice to be here on this side of the table. I guess it was very similar to last year. We were very lucky that the timing of the lockdown wasn't over a critical period of time where we've got lots of field trials and things like that. So we did have some extension activities that had to either be cancelled or rescheduled. And most of the research has been able to be sort of kept going through that winter period. And the staff worked at home as they did last year. And so in general, I think that it's not been too disruptive, just minor glitches, minor delays.
So we just have to hope that we're on our way out now.
Yes. I mean, obviously, and particularly, there's lots of activities we'd like to do up in the, the sort of northern part of the North Island, and we're restricting travel up there. But compared to a lot of other sort of companies, I think FAR has got off relatively lightly.
We're a bit lucky like that. So research besides the agronomy stuff, there's still ongoing and focus on the environment and compliance. So what's happening in that space?
Yeah. I mean, I keep having to say when I talk to people about all of this sort of environment work that we're doing, that doesn't mean that we're not doing all of the other stuff. We've still got, a lot of our researchers out there doing all of our business as usual agronomic work as we've always done. It's just that the environmental compliance sort of environment is just so fast moving and it's so difficult and complicated that we're having to put a lot of time and effort into trying to make sure that we're at the table because, in previous instances, when new legislation has been rolled out, we haven't been engaged, we haven't been able to provide input, and often, the legislation is rolled out to solve a problem, for another industry, often the livestock industry, and then we're almost like collateral damage because they haven't thought through what impact that might have on something like a mixed arable livestock system. So we've decided to be much more proactive, particularly working closely with the federated farmers and making sure that, we're round the table with the other sectors, that we're talking to the government officials, that we're part of the working streams to provide guidance on implementation to make sure that it doesn't end up being a complete disaster for our growers. So there is a lot of work going on in that space, both the freshwater space and the climate change space. And you'll see from the podcasts that we're putting out that, that we're as much as we're trying to provide scientific evidence to better inform the policy groups, we're also making sure that we're providing tools and resources to the growers and trying to get out there and raising their education and awareness around what they're going to have to do and making sure that they've got the tools to be able to do it.
So it's time consuming.
Oh, hugely time consuming. I mean, it is a bit frustrating. We have some really excellent environment researchers at FAR who are not spending a lot of their time doing research because they're sitting round, the table with government officials trying to get them to understand that some of their policies don't make sense in an arable context. So it's quite challenging. But it's really important for us to do. And I do feel that we can strongly justify the input that we're putting into this because it's so important for our growers over the next 18 months that the legislation does make sense for them and that there is a pathway forward for them. And the Fed's arable section and FAR really are the two agencies that have to protect the interests of the arable grower.
So we've talked about there's still business as usual with all the agronomic work. So we're just at the beginning of spring now. What are the key focuses in the field at the moment, research focuses?
Well, we obviously will have all of our, normal CPT trials, fungicide trials, and we've got a big program of work that we're doing, within the CIRC framework on seed crops, and we've got a program of work looking at, soil biology, soil activity. We've signed up to the Lighter Touch program, so we've got a big program of work looking at trying to reduce, pesticide input into arable systems. So it's such a broad range of projects now. If you look back to, 10, 15 years ago, FAR was involved in a lot of things then. But if you look at what we're having to be involved in now, so much broader and more diverse. So we are spread quite thinly across a large number of activities. But that's what FAR's good at. It's good at picking the things that are important to focus on, and it's good at doing the research that will make a difference to the growers. We do need to focus on getting a lot of the results of that research out to the growers. I know that when I first came on as the CEO, I was amazed at the amount of research that we'd done, but because your job is extension and communication, that you have to be taking the results of the research out, consistently and repeatedly over a number of different, a number of years, in order for growers who might not have seen the relevance to the research 3 years ago, but now it is relevant. And so you need to revisit it and take it back out.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting one, because I know we've had this conversation where people say, oh, you should be doing this. And we ran a workshop on that in 2015 and nobody came, but we were just getting a bit ahead of ourselves. So and sometimes just because something was done 5 years ago, it doesn't mean it's outdated.
Yeah. And the nitrogen sort of work that we've done over the years, that's a classic example where, now reducing nitrogen sort of inputs into arable systems is going to be really important, both for a freshwater sort of benefit and a climate change benefit and a cost benefit. And so all that work that we've done over the years that we've sort of dribbled out in various ways. As you know, we've now pulled all that together into that fantastic resource called Having the Confidence to Cut Back. And I think we're going to do a lot more of that, where we're going to pool, programs of work together that, that happened over a period of 5 years, and put it into the context, the important context that it is today, and take it back out to the growers. So we've sort of put it into, I suppose, a flavour that is more flavour of the month. And that is probably going to deliver a lot more benefit to the growers in the short to medium term than us investing a whole load of time and resources into brand new projects.
Okay. So one thing, I note there was a little biosecurity flare-up a couple of weeks ago, which, thanks to MPI's border work, was caught. So biosecurity, an ongoing issue for FAR?
Oh, yes. It's an ongoing issue for everyone in New Zealand, full stop. But obviously, because we've signed up to the GIA, we are now more active in being part of discussions with MPI around potential incursions or high risk sort of priority pests. So the workload associated with being part of the GIA is also increased substantially. And we do have to recognise, because of the number of different crops that we have and the potential number of different pests and diseases, that we often get pulled into a lot more meetings and a lot more discussions than some of the other industries that are basically monoculture industries. And we knew that was going to be a challenge. But the reality is that we have to be part of all of those discussions, because if somebody makes a poor decision on a pest that might primarily be a problem with tomato, but can go onto one of our crops, we have to be round the table to be able to make sure that we understand what's happening.
That's the joy of a levy that covering 40-something crops?
Exactly. And I guess, a lot of people just don't understand that. And so we have to be incredibly adaptable and agile, and we have to be able to jump in and out of meetings and grasp, the important points and make sure that we get the arable point across. And so, yeah, we do. We're spending a lot of time in that space. But again, I feel that we can justify it because we can't afford to have, a major pest or pathogen come in and derail one of our key crops. So it just has to be done.
And you mentioned earlier that we're working, we've always worked with, but more closely with federated farmers at this stage on those sorts of things as well?
Yeah, very much so. I think that we had a good look at our relationship with them, the Fed farmers last year, and decided that while it was okay, it could be a lot better. And we've both made commitments to engaging much more regularly, keeping each agency informed of what's going on, working together on key focus areas, and it's making a big difference. And it's good, for the growers to know that we're doing that, because sometimes, we've found in the past, it's almost where we've been pitted against each other. Yeah. Because, they've said one thing, we've said something slightly different. The growers don't know, who's right and who's wrong. So I think it's good for the industry to have a really good working relationship with the federated farmers. And all the other agencies involved, not only in the arable industry, but in the other industries as well, because, again, it comes back to if we're not round the table, we can end up having perverse outcomes for arable because people were just thinking about trying to solve a problem with dairy or horticulture or whatever.
Okay, so the other thing that springs to mind is that we're 1 year into the Growers Leading Change program.
Yes, I know. And I have to say, even though it's happened when COVID, we've had all these issues with lockdown, I'm really, really pleased with the progress that's being made with Growers Leading Change. It was always one of those things where, it was always a bit of a risk, like, will this work or won't it? And will we get grower engagement? But, a year in, we've got our 7, arable growth groups up and running. We're just evaluating which of the Pathfinder farms we're going to move forward with. And I am really pleased with the ideas that have come through from the growers. And I know that, that we've been doing a whole load of, extension work. Obviously, it's been affected by COVID. But I think 1 year in, I'm certainly feeling very positive about it. And I think that the first year of these types of projects often are quite challenging. And therefore, I'm expecting that year 2 and year 3 is actually going to start ramping up, and we're going to get even more of a momentum going.
Now, looking into the future, which these things come around, so what the next big focus for the 12, 24 months is?
The referendum, yes, I know. And it's interesting because you don't want to focus on the referendum because the reality is if you're doing a good job in delivering benefit, the referendum will take care of itself. But as part of that, I think it's really important that we make sure that we do understand the feeling of the growers. And we have gone out, and we've asked our ARGs, our regional grower groups, tell us what you think is working well. Tell us where you think that we've missed the boat. Give us ideas of how you think that we can do things better. What are the red flags that you think might potentially undermine a successful referendum? And I think doing that 2 years out means you can actually respond. And we have had some really positive feedback. But we've also had some feedback from some groups in some regions who have said, look, we feel as if that you're missing some, focus areas. And so now we've got the opportunity to be able to work with those growers with those concerns to be able to try and address them.
And maize would be one of those ones.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that we recognised that we'd under-delivered value to the maize levy growers, and bringing David Densley on board and developing a maize strategy, doing a lot more field work, a lot more on-farm sort of research, a lot more extension workshops. Hopefully that will start to make the maize growers feel that they're getting more value from FAR.
Great. Okay, well, thank you, Alison. There's definitely a lot going on. COVID hasn't shut the doors on FAR and what it's been doing.
Oh, not at all. It's one of those things that when you have to stay at home, and you can't go out into the field, there is 101 other really valuable things that you can do. And we often complain that, that we don't have time to do lots of background reading, or we don't have time to network with our overseas colleagues, and we don't have time to do this and that. And you haven't got that excuse when you've just been in, 2 or 3 months of ongoing lockdowns, because you now have the time to do a bit more planning, to write up the work. And I think that FAR is in a very good, healthy space, and looking forward to the next year.
Brilliant. So everybody, if you've got any questions about anything that we've touched on today, please do get in touch. We're always at the end of the phone or at the end of an email. And in the meantime, we should say this together.
That's right.
Have a great day on the farm.
Thanks for tuning in to Cut the Crop, presented to you by FAR. If you'd like to know more about any of the topics discussed or have any suggestions for future topics, go to www.cutthecrop.co.nz.